Congress is one step closer to giving federal protection to same-sex marriage. In a key vote last night, the bill gained the support of enough senators to clear a filibuster. A final vote in the Senate is expected today.
A bipartisan group of senators included an amendment protecting the rights of those who oppose gay marriage on religious grounds. Still, critics say the amendment doesn't do enough to protect religious freedom. Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka reports.
The bill was amended by a bipartisan group of senators putting in more religious liberty protections. But some Republicans say that even with the amended bill, it's still lacking. The amended bill hopes to win over Senate Republicans seeking religious liberty protections. The changes were put in place by two Democrats, Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, along with three Republicans, North Carolina's Thom Tillis, Maine's Susan Collins, and Ohio's Rob Portman. The five released a statement on the amendment's effect, saying, quote, "Through bipartisan collaboration, we've crafted common-sense language to confirm that this legislation fully respects and protects Americans' religious liberties and diverse beliefs, while leaving intact the core mission of the legislation to protect marriage equality." The revisions include a guarantee that religious nonprofits won't be forced to facilitate same-sex marriages. It also promises not to alter the tax-exempt status of organizations following their religious beliefs. Supporters said that the bill was needed in the wake of the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade, after Justice Clarence Thomas floated the idea of revisiting multiple cases, including the legalization of same-sex marriage.
Millions of Americans deserve equal justice under the law, and peace of mind knowing their right to marry the person they love is protected.
Some critics felt the bill was unnecessary and singles out people whose religious beliefs teach traditional marriage.
I think the bill needs to be amended. Religious liberty is a cornerstone of our democracy. It's explicitly protected by the United States Constitution, and we cannot allow it to be trampled on.
Utah Senator Mike Lee has been pushing for more religious liberty protections through his own amendment. He called the latest bill change, quote, insufficient, and argues churches and charities would be subjected to endless litigation under the Respect for Marriage Act, something other critics of the bill have echoed.
Senator Lee's amendment would actually accomplish something. It would actually restrain the federal government from taking adverse action against individuals and organizations that hold traditional views about marriage.
The Senate voted 61-35 for the bill as it overcomes the filibuster. 12 Republicans joined Democrats to advance it. Gordon?
So, Matt, what are the Senator Lee's concerns about religious liberty, and is it possible his amendment will be added to the bill?
Well, I think it basically comes down to that threat of a litigation, and not just for churches and charities, but also orphanages. You had Senator Marco Rubio, who has his own amendment trying to protect orphanages and other groups that only recognize marriage between a man and a woman. And if it's not from attorneys or lawyers, they're also worried that the IRS could go after tax-exempt status. But the Lee amendment will get a vote today on the Senate floor.
Okay, what convinced enough Republicans to support the bill so that it would pass a filibuster?
If you look at some of the roster of the Republicans that did join with the Democrats, you have some more moderate Republicans, you have some retiring Republicans. But this is actually the second time that it has cleared this hurdle, originally before it was amended, and then yesterday after it was amended. But the Lee amendment actually played a huge role in yesterday's vote. You had a couple of Republican holdouts who were waiting until there was a deal on that Lee amendment. They wanted to see a vote on that. Now, whether that amendment passes today, we'll have to wait and see.
How is this going to affect secular businesses? So let's take the famous Colorado baker, who seems to always be a target for gay couples that want him to do particular kinds of cakes. What happens to everybody involved in the wedding business, anyone in a secular environment who can't claim the religious exemption, but what about free speech, freedom of expression, all of those protections?
Yeah, and you know, in the piece we heard from Senator John Cornyn from Texas, he brought up some of those businesses and his concerns about basically opening the floodgates here for endless litigation and perhaps people being persecuted for their religious beliefs. I think that's why you have a large number of Republicans in the Senate and in the House also who are worried about basically what they're calling an open season on some of these groups. That's why they say it needs to be amended. And today we'll see at least 3 votes on new amendments, including the one from Senator Mike Lee. We'll have one from Senator Rubio and also Senator Lankford today. A busy day starting at around 4 o'clock today, so we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens.
Well, I'm just amazed at the preamble to the bill. It says specifically it's repealing the Defense of Marriage Act. I'm old enough to remember that, and everyone in Congress, everyone in the U.S. Senate said you don't have to worry about the Supreme Court changing the rules because we now have the Defense of Marriage Act on the books, and they're not going to be able to change our culture. Now we're seeing that same institution just out front saying the first thing we're doing is repealing the Defense of Marriage Act. Any commentary on that?
Well, it's interesting because I think you have both sides saying, even though, Gordon, you said you're old enough, we know you're not that old, but they say, you know, 10 years ago, this would be unthinkable that you would have both sides of the aisle coming together for this. But at least from some of the Republicans who are supporting it, some of them have cited a couple of national polls where they see a majority of people, and even some religious institutions that are supportive of same-sex marriage. So it's very interesting to see the changes. And again, when you look at the roster of some of the Republicans who have voted for this, some of them won't be in the chamber next year. So when you have senators and congressmen and women who are outgoing, sometimes they take votes they normally wouldn't if they were looking to get reelected again. So it's very interesting what's going on Capitol Hill right now.
Matt, thanks for the